Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us in today's episode where I will be interviewing Nate Klipfel. Did I say that right?
Yes, yeah, like a clip fell off the table.
Klipfel?
Yeah.
Fell off a cliff. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nate, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. You are a carnivore success story, and I can never get enough of those. So thank you, welcome, and let's just go ahead and have you share with us a little bit of your background. How did you get to this crazy diet called the carnivore diet?
Well, thank you again for having me on. Very, very honored to be here. Thank you. So it started with an interest in health early on, I think. I can very much thank my mother for that. She definitely instilled a desire for health in me when I was young. Of course, as I mentioned with Dr. Chaffee, she had kind of read the old outdated versions of what health is, and so she was very, fruits and vegetables and whole grains and all of that, and meat is bad. But I am incredibly grateful and thankful for her giving me the tools to investigate my own health. And so that's what I started to do in high school. I felt kind of scrawny and weak and frail, and I had been skateboarding for a while. I started when I was like 9 years old. And so by high school, I had already been doing it for a while. And so that kind of gave me a little more comfort with my body and how I moved, but I still felt very thin and just weak. And I felt like I couldn't defend myself if I needed to. And so I started. First thing I did was I did push-ups and sit-ups in my bedroom every single morning until I couldn't move. I did that every day up until my junior year of high school, when I was allowed to join the weight training group, and then I started lifting weights from there, and actually did not enjoy it. I probably for the first 3 or 4 years of lifting weights, I really didn't get much enjoyment out of it, but I knew what it was doing for me. People made comments about how I was gaining muscle and etc., and it made me feel good to feel stronger and those sorts of things. So I kept with it anyway, and then by the time I got to college, I started to delve more into kind of the bodybuilding sphere and get an idea of the actual science behind it and learn, and that's when I started studying it and learning more about it, and that's when I became really passionate, and that eventually all led me down the path of looking into diet and health, but I didn't really make that big difference until, like I talked about with Dr. Chaffee, I finally got lucky and found a doctor who told me that I should try a ketogenic diet for my seizures, because I had seizures growing up. And when I did that, it completely resolved them, 100% cured off of all medications in 2 months. And I haven't had a seizure since. It's been almost 10 years now. And that's the only time in my life where I was free of them. And then once I had started dabbling more with keto, that all, just kind of led deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of health and diet, and I came across all kinds of different carnivores, and I think Dr. Sean Baker was probably the first person who I really saw that really drove me into, okay, there's something to this, because I first saw his interview, and then I started separately looking into Jordan Peterson just for his philosophy, because I thought he was really interesting. And then all of a sudden I hear that Jordan Peterson and his daughter have both resolved tremendous issues with this crazy carnivore diet thing. And so that's when I was decided in 2018, and I was like, okay, I need to try this. I can't call myself a trainer and a nutritionist if I don't try something crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We should mention that you are a trainer right now, correct?
Yes, yeah, I'm a personal trainer and a nutritionist. I run my own training and nutrition business out here in Henderson in Nevada.
And are your macros on a carnivore diet ketogenic macros right now?
No, that's what I love so much about carnivore is when I was on keto, it was very helpful, and it's helped both me and a lot of clients resolve a lot of things. But it still felt in a lot of ways to me like a diet program, and like I needed to be tracking this and that and the other thing. And it was just something I didn't want to have to do the rest of my life. And what carnivore gave me was the freedom to just, I can actually eat whatever I want as long as it's meat. You know, and that was a huge like weight off of my shoulders for so, because I became, when I was bodybuilding, I mentioned I pretty much became orthorexic and just incessantly tracking every little thing, and it was mind numbing. And so when I found this, and when I got assistance from Brett Lloyd, who's another famous carnivore, amazing guy. He's been hugely influential in my journey on carnivore. And he just told me, follow directions, just eat the meat that you crave and that you can afford, and eat until you're not hungry, and don't let sweetness pass your tongue, and trust the process. And I did that, and oh, it's funny to me because I always hear from people how, oh man, that's so restrictive. All you can eat is meat and salt. You don't get any seasonings. You don't get to have any plants. You don't get to have blah, blah, blah. And all I can think is, no, you don't understand. This is so freeing for me because I don't have the mental health issues that I used to. I don't have the aches and pains and the soreness and the tribulations and all of the struggles that I used to go through every single day. Those are gone. And so now it's so, every time I get to choose, you know, today I want to have 3 pounds of chicken, and tomorrow maybe I'm going to have 2 big ribeyes, and then the next day I'll eat exclusively bacon all day. You know, it's an amazing and freeing thing.
So it's interesting that a carnivore diet, despite not having keto macros, is still keeping any seizures at bay, and you're not taking any medications, right? You would think that it would work as long as you're following keto macros.
Yeah, and that's actually something I hadn't even thought about. That's a really good point, because ketosis was originally what controlled my seizures, and there's a good chance that, you know, I'll eat easily 2, sometimes as many as 4 pounds of meat in a day, and sometimes it's very lean, sometimes it is a lot of chicken, which will probably be enough protein to kick me out of ketosis. But I don't, yeah, I still haven't noticed any of those issues. I would be, because I don't track anything anymore and I just eat to satiety, it's hard to say for sure how often I am or am not in ketosis, especially since I usually only eat once a day. Sometimes I'll eat twice a day. But I would say, you know, at least 50 or 75% of the time, I'm only eating 1 meal a day. So even if I am getting kicked out of ketosis, it's for a brief period throughout the day. So it's possible that 90% of the time I'm probably in ketosis anyway. But yeah, that's a very good point. I hadn't considered
Interesting. That. Have you ever competed?
Not in bodybuilding. I trained to compete one time. That was back in 2013, right after I had gone keto for the first time, because it allowed me to drop 30 pounds in about a month.
How many pounds?
30.
And,
yeah.
And how long?
Or I guess it was 2 months. It was 30 pounds in 2 months. But
Wow.
It was particularly impressive to me because I didn't think I had much fat to lose because I was already fairly lean to begin with. But just going keto dropped every single bit of excess for me. And it was immediately after that, of course, that I started getting accused of taking steroids, which made me very, I always thought that that's the biggest compliment you can get, is people assume you're on steroids when you're not. So
right.
I appreciated that. But that was when I considered bodybuilding, but I realized at that point, I had gotten lean enough to where I decided, well, I really like the way I look. I don't need any judges to tell me that I look better than this guy or that guy. So I don't need to compete. This is
right.
And that was huge for me too, because I'd had a lot of, again, not diagnosed, but a lot of kind of body dysmorphic issues for a long time. I always hated like little things about my body that I would fixate on, very common with those sorts of disorders. And I was never completely satisfied with what I saw in the mirror. I could always see progress, but I could also always see every single little fault. And that was after doing that was the first time in my life where I actually looked in the mirror and I thought, I like most of this.
Wow. Yeah. There is absolutely a psychological component to how we feel about our bodies. Like brain chemical dysfunction that can affect whether or not you feel good enough or not, or feel comfortable in your own skin or not. It's not just whether or not you have some extra pounds or not. So right. Yeah, I completely, and I can understand that very well. So let's get the most important thing out of the way. What do you eat right now?
So right now, I kind of go through phases. I'm someone who likes to have a lot of structure, and I often overdo it on the structure. That's where the kind of orthorexia came from. And so I use my food regimen, because it's so freeing usually, as a way to organize everything else. So I had a long period of having, 10 to 12 ounces of bone broth, homemade bone broth per day, as well as about 2 ounces of raw liver. And then I would have whatever meat was on sale, because I always went for the cheapest meat I could find. I did notice that I need to have beef at least 3 or 4 times a week, if not every day, just because pork and chicken don't seem to fully do it for me. Beef is really the thing that satisfies me and satiates me. So in addition to the bone broth and the liver, I would usually have around, on average, 2 or 3 pounds of some kind of meat daily, and it would vary day to day, just so I could get some variety in there, because I got bored of doing ribeyes all the time sometimes. So,
do you do dairy?
No, I actually did end up cutting out dairy after a while. That was something that I talked about with Brett Lloyd too, was that was kind of the missing piece for me in eliminating my cravings and my food addiction. Not that I think dairy is necessarily bad or that it's bad for everyone or anything like that, but I do notice that, just like how I used to as a kid go overboard with sugar and sweets and those sorts of things, I would often just sit there and eat an entire brick of cheese, which yeah, which for a lot of people isn't a problem. And it took me a long time to recognize it as a problem for me, because I didn't really get issues from it. I didn't get like a lot of indigestion or anything. I got a little bit of bloating, but it wasn't anything too major. So I figured, okay, well, it's not really that much of a problem for me. But that's when I started to assess and look at, okay, well, am I actually eating it because I crave it and I need the nutrition from it? Or am I just eating it because I love it and it's tasty and I want to keep eating it? So that's what caused me to cut out dairy. I do still incorporate some ghee and a little bit of raw butter. And I do think somewhere down the line, I might try to reincorporate a little bit of raw dairy, if I can get access to it. But it's, as long as it's not something that I'm craving or that I feel that I need, I will continue to abstain from it.
So let's run through maybe a sample day like yesterday and today, just so that we can put it all in one day, for example. What did you eat yesterday?
Okay. That's funny because I just changed.
Okay, or maybe like the day before, like the older kind of meal plan, and then the day where you changed, you know, like 2 days.
Sure. So yeah, so the older meal plan was I would wake up between 4 and 5 a.m., get up. First thing I would do is have my bone broth with my raw liver, and I would actually also usually eat about probably about 2 ounces of raw suet with some salt, because I realized that was delicious.
I've never had it. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually really good. I just get it straight from the butcher. It's like $2 a pound. So yeah, it's a great deal. I'm huge on saving money, so that's always helpful. So that's how I would start my day. And then I would actually have, this is the one supplement that the only supplement I've taken for years now is it's just an organ meat blend. It was pancreas, spleen, liver, kidney, and heart, I think. And it's just, you know, six pills. So I would take that daily just because I noticed that when I had those things together, the suet, the liver, and the pills, it kind of gave me a really good energy boost for the rest of the day, better than any caffeine or energy drinks I used to have when I was binging on food. So that's how I would start my day. I would go to work, and then after work, I would come home, hop in my little home sauna, and then after about noon or 1 p.m. Is when I would have my main meal for the day, which was typically mostly consisted of beef, anywhere from 1 to 2 pounds of beef. And then I would usually have something as a side to it, like half a pound to a pound of bacon, or a pound or so of chicken, or sometimes I'll have a pound or 2 of shrimp or something like that, a little bit of seafood I like to throw in there. And then I would always have a can of sardines as well, the wild caught sardines. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If I had a really intense and long day and a crazy workout that day, I might eat one more time when I got home, but it would just be a smaller meal where I just have a pound of bacon or just something that I can fry up or cook up real fast. But yeah, that was my typical thing for probably a year.
Wow. Okay, that's great. So when you say 1 to 2 pounds of beef, do you mean the 1 pound when it's uncooked, and then, you know, or 1 pound? I think it's uncooked. Yes. What most people say. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, I never weighed it anyway, but yeah, I would usually gauge based on when it was uncooked. So yeah, I guess I probably was having maybe, you know, 3/4 of that less than I thought, because a lot of it gets cooked off. So.
Right, of course. And do you do eggs?
That was another thing that I experimented with cutting out, because same kind of thing is, or kind of similar thing to cheese. I never went overboard with eggs. I never felt like I needed to eat a lot of them, but I did get just a little bit of mild bloating from them, even when I got the, you know, Vital Farms pasture raised orange yolk, beautiful ones. I would still kind of feel just little puffy after having them. Of course, I'd have 8 to 10 in a sitting, but
right.
So I cut those out a while back, just to experiment, and I haven't had any desire for them, which is why I say it's funny that we do this today, because I just randomly stumbled across some pickled quail eggs today that I just had a hankering for, and I gave them a try, and they were delicious. So, and I don't have any bloating yet, so we'll see. This is my first time trying eggs again in probably a couple of months. So
okay, what other differences in this new eating style do you have?
So now it's a lot. I'm not making myself so regimented, because I would very strictly structure how I ate before, where I would make sure I always have my bone broth and my raw fat first, and then my raw liver, to make sure all of that kind of digests and I get the optimal amount of nutrients from each thing. And then I had my my organ meat pills, and then I would have my actual food, so that, you know, try to optimize digestion, whatever it was. So now I just, the last few days, I've kind of decided, well, I don't actually like eating the liver. As much as I do think it benefited me for a long time, I don't enjoy it. I don't like having to take pills. I don't like the supplements. I do like the fat, so I'll probably continue that. But I really just want to, when I'm craving a food, I want to be able to just go in, grab that food and eat it. And so that's what I've been doing the last couple of days, and it has been awesome. Like yesterday I had probably about, and this is cooked rather than raw, so I had probably like 2 pounds of cooked chicken and about a pound of cooked tri-tip. And then today what did I eat? I ate a pound of bacon, another pound of the chicken thighs, and then I tried out those quail eggs.
Right.
I had probably half a little can of that.
Any special seasonings?
Salt, only salt.
Only salt.
Yeah.
Okay. And the bacon that you get, does it have sugar in it, special bacon, or just regular whatever bacon?
That's the thing I did notice, that I used to love the, you know, cheap Costco bacon, but any bacon, even if it doesn't show up in the nutrition facts as having, you know, it has 0 sugar per serving or whatever, if it has sugar in the ingredients, I will have some bloating and a little bit of a reaction to it. So I learned that I either have to, I found out that Walmart actually sells the low sodium bacon, which ironically just, it's the same basic thing, it just doesn't have sugar as one of the ingredients. It has sodium erythritol or something, which I guess is kind of a derivative of sugar. But
sodium what?
I'm
putting you on the spot again.
No, that's okay. I think it was sodium erythorbate is what I want to say it was. Erythorbate.
Ascorbate? No, that makes no sense to me, but okay. I'll look it up.
I could be wrong. It might have been a glycinate, some weird thing. That would make more sense because the glyco would come from glucose. But,
right. Okay. Which is there are so many different names for sugar. There are at least 52, and that's not even a comprehensive list that I share with my students every semester. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some name out there that I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's technically, I think the reason this one's really tricky is that the final product of the sodium whatever is not related to sugar. It just originally is kind of like derived from sugar and then processed in such a way, or whatever it is, you know. So I tried those out, and I did notice that those don't seem to have a negative impact on me. So I would still much rather try to get all of my bacon, and especially chicken and pork, because they're monogastric animals. I much prefer to get them pasture raised when I can, but it's gonna take earning a little bit more money first before I can invest in that.
Right.
But yeah, so I do well with that bacon, as long as there's no sugar in the ingredients list.
And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned shrimp. Do you cook it in any special way?
What did I do when I cooked shrimp last? I just salted it, and then I air fried it, and then I just poured some butter all over it. It was delicious.
Got it. Okay, cool. And you mentioned that the supplements that you take and the organ meats, well, you used to take, give you a boost in energy. So I guess you're not having any caffeine?
No, I have been off of caffeine for 2, maybe almost 3 years now, which is huge for me because I was completely dependent on it for years, like almost a decade. So
wow. Yeah, me too. But it's been 7 months for me, close to 7 months. I'm about to hit 7 months caffeine free. And I fell off the wagon twice first. So I did 30 days and then another 30 days. And then finally on November 13th of last year, it stuck. So I'm about to hit 7 months caffeine free. And I think once you're over the first month, you know, it becomes really easy to stick with it. So yeah. Before I move on and ask you a whole host of questions, what is the device that is stuck in your hands?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so these are the grounding patches. So one of the big things that so I met Brett Lloyd through Rivero Health, Sean Baker's, it used to be Meat RX, his carnivore community, and I had met so many different amazing people through there. And one of the coaches there, Becky, she's gotten like an entire like elite level graduate education now, just all in grounding. And she was so adamant about it and sold on it that I was like, okay, this is somebody who's had a lot of experience with carnivore, really brilliant person. There's got to be something to this. And so I started experimenting with it, just going outside and getting my bare feet in the grass. And that alone was such a huge change for me, just doing that daily, just for a couple of minutes, that I now try to get any and all access to it that I can. So I found, she actually directed me towards a website called earthing.com, and they have these grounding mats. So sitting at my computer here, I have my feet down on a grounding mat, and then I have the patches on my hands, and I even have there's a thing that goes under your bedspread, and then a pillowcase, a grounding pillowcase as well. So I'm just grounded 100% of the time, basically.
So that's very interesting. It like mimics you being outside in nature on Earth, basically.
Yes. Yeah. It's supposed to. I haven't adequately done my research on it yet. I have a book. I have like 50. I read probably 2 books a week now, but I have like 50 different books that I'm looking to get to, and one of them is on earthing and grounding, and so I haven't done the official research on it, but it has something to do with electron transfer from nature into our cells. It helps mitochondria, digestion, inflammation, all sorts of things.
That's fascinating. I'm definitely going to look this up, and I'm going to try to see if I can find some of those mats, so I can link them in the description box below if anybody's interested, or if you have the actual link, actually, you can send it to me as well, and I'll link them all below.
Oh, yeah, it's earthing.com.
Yeah. So before we continue, I guess we talked about your meal plan, we talked about supplements. To wrap up this topic, let's do the exercise portion as well.
Sure.
So how's your exercise right now?
Oh, amazing. So I've been I kind of started with bodybuilding and then transitioned towards powerlifting, and now I have a number of clients who have broken world records in powerlifting now, and one of them got bored of breaking all of her own world records because she did it like 3 times, and so she now decided to move on to Olympic lifts, which was something I had absolutely zero experience in and was very cautious about because I know the high risk of injury there. So I started learning those with her, and I'm starting to get really into them and enjoy them a lot. So I'm trying to incorporate those into my own programming now. So I work out now 5 days a week, usually about 45 minutes to an hour. Sometimes like this last Friday, I'll go a little crazy and I'll do like an hour and a half or a 2-hour workout just because I have the extra time and I love it. But yeah, typically they're not super long workouts, but they are very intense. I try to make the vast majority of the workout be very challenging, either in terms of lots of heavy weight, or just a lot of muscle hypertrophy stuff where I'm just exhausting the muscle with every single set. But it's mostly kind of a mixture of a little bit of Olympic lifting, a lot of bit of powerlifting, teeny bit of bodybuilding, and a lot of stuff that I've gleaned from a guy on Instagram, his handle is Squat University, Dr. Aaron Horschig, just absolutely
I've
brilliant.
seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a brilliant physical therapist. I read his book, Rebuilding Milo. Highly recommend it. And that was one of the big things that helped me correct a lot of my pains, including some of the back problems that I'd had in the past. So I incorporate a lot of his kind of tenets of lifting into my programming now.
Okay, and you said cardio as well?
Nope, no cardio.
No cardio. So all of this is just hitting the weights.
Yeah, it's all lifting weights. The way I kind of, I mean, I say no cardio. I guess that's not entirely true. I don't ever go running. I don't do any crazy intensive biking or anything like that. All I do for cardio is I love to walk and I love to be out in the sun. So I'll walk for an aggregate of maybe an hour and a half a day just to get out in the sun, and just leisurely walking, no fast walking or anything like that. And then part of the programming that I do with my lifting, because the Olympic lifting and some of the powerlifting is so intense, I will break up those really intense days with what Dr. Horschig calls a carry day. So instead of lifting as much weight as you can, what you end up doing is you grab some weights, either just holding like heavy kettlebells in each hand, or picking a rack up. It's called a yoke, kind of like the strongman type stuff, and you just walk around with it. Or grab some stuff that you only hold on one side so that you're challenged unilaterally and you walk that way. So I do that. I do those carry days twice a week now, because they really help with my joints. So
interesting. There's a certain primal reason for that, also why a lot of people do that, and the military incorporates that, and it's becoming also a trend. And the thinking goes is that our hunter-gatherer ancestors would hunt and have to carry like a heavy load back to the camp, back to where they're at, and so there's a long distance of walking while you're carrying a heavy load on top of that. And there might be a lot of health benefits that we might not yet know about, but the more we can mimic that kind of behavior, it seems that people are deriving a lot of benefit from it, which is why it's becoming so popular. And I see it, well, not all over, but people like you who are into fitness and health know about it, and it's becoming a trend. That's very interesting.
Well, it's the biggest thing that really drew me to it was seeing Dr. recommending this, and then all of a sudden, as soon as I saw that, I started seeing all of these like world record powerlifters who lift 900, 1,000, 1,100 pounds, and then crazy world record Olympic lifters and strongmen, and all of these people are all incorporating this, and it's all because they're trying to avoid pain and injury. And and as soon as I started doing that, a lot of my pain had already disappeared before I'd started doing that, but this helped tremendously with it too, and I just feel significantly more mobile now.
So let's talk about that, because I know we talked before the interview about chronic pain, but let's share your story regarding that with our audience, and how it was before and where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I dealt with chronic pain most of my life. I never had any like really serious injuries. The worst things that ever happened were I fractured my foot skateboarding when I was in like 6th grade. And that was just like a few week, like 6-week recovery time, nothing too major. And then in college, I fell from about 10 feet up directly onto my wrist with my entire body weight. Amazing that I didn't break any bones there. But I did damage a ligament in my wrist. And when I went to the doctors, they said that my options were be in pain the rest of my life, because at a certain point, I couldn't even get down into a push-up. I couldn't hold a barbell because I had already been working out a lot at this point, and that was really important to me. And
how old were you then?
Let's see, it was, I want to say my junior year of college. So I was 21, I think.
Okay.
21.
Right.
Yeah, and the doctors told me my only, like, there's no way to fix it. It's permanently damaged on the ligament. The only things you can do are get surgery or be in pain forever. And so I didn't accept either of those. And so I was really lucky that I had a buddy who helped me rehab it at the time. And, 3 months later and learning more about diet stuff, completely resolved that. And I haven't had pain in that wrist since then. So,
Wow.
8-9 years.
And your diet
so,
back
yeah.
then was still keto, but still, even with that, it helped.
Yeah, even with just keto, and I can guarantee, and so that was about a 3-month recovery for that wrist to get back into working order where it didn't hurt to be in a push-up or hold a bench press. I can guarantee if I had been carnivore way back then, it would have been more like a 1-month recovery, because later on, even with the keto, I still had a lot of the chronic aches and pains. I had, as a trainer, I did a lot of different things. At one point, I was working 19 hours a day for about 6 to 7 days a week, sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night. Not something I would ever recommend, no matter what diet you're on. But I can guarantee that the combination of my diet and working out every day are the only reason I didn't collapse and go insane while I was doing that, because I did that for about 2 years. And that's when I really did start to notice, though, my knees were really hurting me. This was, I was in my late 20s at this point, and it was really starting to hurt my knees. My back would get really, really exhausted. I would have trouble, and I was working 19 hours a day because I was essentially running a gym, and I had
So it was your own gym? Or were you working for?
I was partnered with a friend. I won't go into that for legal reasons, but it didn't turn out well, unfortunately. But yeah, I was essentially running the gym, and so I had classes of anywhere from 5 to 10 people every hour from 4 a.m. until 9 or 10 p.m. most days. Yeah, and so it was just nonstop, and I didn't really have an option to sit down. And that's when I was doing experimenting with 4 meals a week, because that's all I really had time for. And I had to be, actually at one point I even did a 6-day fast because I was like, okay, I'd rather spend my time sleeping than trying to eat, so I'm just going to fast for 6 days. That was surprisingly easy too. I just drank salt water the whole time, and
that was when you were doing carnivore.
That was my first trial of carnivore. So yeah, 2018, I tried carnivore for the first time, and that's when fasting just started becoming super easy for me. And so I just started doing it naturally.
And you lost how many pounds, you said, when you did that 6 day fast? So
the 6-day fast, and bear in mind, I was already at pretty much my leanest in my life. I lost 12 pounds and 3% body fat in those 6 days. Yeah, just as an experiment. But again, this was, I attribute the fact that I wasn't fully recovered and I wasn't in the kind of mental state, the positive mental state I am now, partly to the fact that I was working way too much and sleeping way too little and literally never seeing the sun because I was inside the gym, 19 hours a day. So I would get there before the sun came up and stay there after it came down. But I think a big part of the reason that I didn't feel better mental health benefits even with that going on is that I wasn't fully committed to carnivore yet. So I would still have a cheat meal, once every couple of weeks, sometimes once a week. And yeah, and it was keeping my addiction going. And the thing that really got me off of it was when I was getting closer to, when it was getting getting closer to 2019, I started really noticing the effects of those cheat meals because I had such long days and I had to stay positive that entire time. And it was so extremely difficult. I would get so frustrated and my temper would get really short. And I noticed that always happened about 3 or 4 days after I had had a cheat meal. Those 3 or 4 days, I would be a lot more quick-tempered. I would be a lot more dreary and depressed, and I would complain about things a lot more. And I was like, I'm tired of this. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And so, yeah, that was what.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask you to go a little bit more in depth with regards to mental health. But before that, is there anything about the chronic pain that we missed?
Oh, yes. So yeah, once I made the commitment to really just go meat, salt, and water, I mean, all of this time, like I said, I'm an avid reader and I love researching stuff about topics I'm interested in. So I do all kinds of diet research, and I started looking into things like cold showers and meditation and breathing techniques and grounding. And that was when I first started doing cold showers from, I don't know if you've heard of Mike Metzel.
Yeah, Mike Mutzel.
Mike
Yeah.
Metzel, yeah.
High Intensity Health is
Yes,
his handle on Instagram and YouTube. Great resource for everybody who's listening.
Yes, he is brilliant, and he a couple years ago had posted. It was actually, I think, shortly before the pandemic, somewhere around mid 2019, he posted a research article talking about how cold showers. It was like people who took daily cold showers were something like 20 or 40% less likely to call in sick for work. And so that was kind of what got me into it, because when I was working that many hours and training that many people, I would constantly come across parents and families and kids who were sniffly and sick and constantly getting exposed to stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I can't be getting other people sick, so I need to stay healthy myself. And the cold showers sound like a great way to wake myself up at 3 a.m. So I better start trying it. And I have not gone back since that. I've been doing cold showers every day since 2019 now. And surprise, surprise, I also haven't been sick since 2019. So
amazing. Yeah.
And my pain is disappeared. I had a slipped disc and severe foraminal stenosis in my back. Again, another thing that was supposedly only fixable with surgery and years of recovery. And just by researching some physical therapy techniques and eating meat, it was about a month after my slipped disc that I was actually already pain-free. And then within 3 months, I was already back to lifting kind of more regularly. I was still cautious because I was nervous. And I had a couple little, like, my form wasn't perfect on something. And so I would have a little twinge here or there for the next couple of months. But that was, let's see, that was years ago now. And the last time I remember having any kind of back pain, probably 2019 also, actually. That was the last real time I remember having it. And since then, I've now set and broke multiple state records in powerlifting of my own. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And you got the slipped disc from lifting?
It's hard to say. I because of the skateboarding, I had a lot of years of disc compression and a lot of impact stress on my back. And then I was always really cautious about my form when I was lifting, but I do think that there were definitely some situations where I was probably not cautious enough and going maybe a little bit heavier than I was quite prepared for. But the funny thing is the slip disc just happened randomly, because I do think it was influenced by this. The day before it happened, I I did some pretty heavy deadlifts, and I don't know what my back looked like because I didn't film it, but I don't imagine it looked very good because I remember feeling fatigued. And then the very next day I was handing one of my clients a dumbbell, and it was just a 50-pound dumbbell, nothing major. And as I handed it to them, it felt like somebody took a battle axe and chopped me in the back, and I almost collapsed on the floor and I couldn't breathe for a minute. Yeah, and I had to tell that client, like, okay, I'm going to keep training you, but for the rest of the day, you're going to have to grab your weights because I can't move. And I could barely walk for the rest of that day. And yeah, my rehab program was, it was like 15 miles of walking per day. And then I did a 5x5 split 3 times a day with just an open bar. 5x5 is squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, and barbell row. So you do those 5 exercises, 5 sets, 5 reps each. But I would just have to do it with only the bar, and I'd have to do it 3 times a day on top of the walking 15 miles a day. So it was a really rigorous rehab program, but it got me pain-free in a month. So that was.
So the 15 miles walking is going to rehabilitate a slip disc. I'm not familiar with that.
This was not a conventional treatment. This was with a friend's advice, and it was. I didn't. Well, at the time I wasn't insured. This was right before we had actually opened that gym that I was running for a while, and I didn't have the option to get insurance. I was flat broke. I had just moved from California to Nevada, and yeah, so I had no options but to just do whatever was necessary. But yeah, I had not heard of walking being a therapy for a slipped disc, and it was excruciating to do because every step was fairly painful. But I do believe that it was hugely helpful in rehabilitating my spine, for sure.
Well, clearly, yeah, that's amazing. So let's talk about the mental health aspect. And from there, I want to go into the food addiction as well and try to see how long it took you to overcome that. But let's first deal with the mental health aspect. How was your mental health before and after implementing a full-blown carnivore diet?
So mental health was something I had worked on my entire life. My whole family had struggled with mental health issues at one point or another. There were psychotic episodes that occurred with men in my family. Happened to me in college. I actually had to be hospitalized briefly for that. We apparently have some gene where it's called marijuana-induced psychosis. So if any of the males in my family ever smoke weed for an extended period of time, we will just become psychotic.
Does it happen right after you smoke, or like after a few episodes, it like builds up in your system and then it triggers?
I think this was more of a theory than reality, because in each situation, I mean, it happened to my dad, it happened to my brother, and it happened to me. But in each situation, there were a lot of other factors involved. My dad was in the military at war when it happened to him. My brother was severely depressed, and he was a teenager, and he was trying out other drugs at the time when it happened to him. And then when it happened to me in college, the only drug I ever did was weed, but and I had been smoking it for consistently for over a year at that point. But I was in a very toxic relationship at the time, living with this person, and I was very stressed out because we were both in college trying to get through, and she was having a lot of issues, and I was trying to take care of her and take care of myself at the same time. And so I think it was more just a stress buildup, and then probably the weed didn't help. But yeah, I just, the funny thing was my degree is actually in psychology and philosophy. So it was very interesting to have this experience. You know, I almost consider myself lucky for having had it, just because it's such a unique thing that very few people experience, and even fewer people experience without and actually get to come back from it. You know, a lot of people will become psychotic and then that's the rest of their lives. They're in and out of hospitals.
Can you elaborate, like, what happens in a crisis like that where you have to be hospitalized? If you want, if you feel comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this was really interesting to me. That's why I studied it. So what happened for me is I had a lot of the textbook signs. First, it began with some paranoia. And so then to try to kind of get that off, because I could sense what was going on and I had been researching it in college as it was happening. And so I decided, okay, well, I better keep a log. I better keep a journal of my thoughts to see where they're going wrong so that I can course correct and adjust this so I can stop the potential psychosis from happening, because I could feel it happening. And so I started logging my thoughts, and the thoughts got more and more erratic. They became more delusional. There were delusions of grandeur. At one point, I was an atheist my whole life. But at one point I started believing that I was Jesus Christ resurrected and that it was my job to save the planet and the world was going to end very, very soon if I didn't do something about it. And that entire responsibility was on my shoulders. And the whole time, the crazy thing is I was very aware of this. I was aware that these are delusions. I know that these aren't real, but I can't stop how real they feel. And nothing I can stop from doing it. And the thing that finally got me to the hospitalization point was when I started talking about it, and my girlfriend at the time got a little bit nervous because it sounded really delusional. And so she called my dad. And when my dad spoke to me, I remember he told me that I was so impressionable at that point that he felt like if he would have told me that I should go walk off of a bridge and kill myself, then I would have just done it without any questions asked. So that's what made him really nervous. And he said, okay, we got to get you somewhere and get you some help. So incredibly grateful to my parents for making that recognition, because that did help. But that's just one portion of the example of the degree to which my mental health was important to me. Because after the huge benefit of having that experience is that there is absolutely nothing scarier on the planet than losing your mind. I had no fear of death or no fear of torture or pain or anything after that, because there's no worse feeling that I could imagine than not having control of your cognitive faculties. So once that happened, I was determined that, okay, I am never going to lose a grip on my sanity ever again. And that was one of the big things that got me eventually looking into mental health and keto. And again, this was about, I had that psychotic episode, I think in 2010. And then I had a grand mal seizure that same year. 2010 is when I had the psychotic episode, and then I had a grand mal seizure that almost killed me in 2011. So the beginning of the next year.
You were already having seizures growing up. So were you at that point taking medication ever since you were young, ever since they started?
No, actually, because we didn't know what they were, and they weren't. Yeah, so they were more like auras. So they weren't actually grand mal or petit mal. They were just auras for most of my life until college. And so I didn't know what they were, but it wasn't anything. No one would have guessed that it was seizures, and so we never thought to even ask about that until I actually had that seizure in 2011, and that's when I got started on all boatloads of medication.
What's the difference between a seizure that's an aura versus a grand mal seizure?
So the grand mal is what people typically can think of when they think of seizures, where you fall on the floor, you're essentially unconscious, you're convulsing, maybe frothing at the mouth, whatever ends up happening. Those are the really dangerous ones that most people who are diagnosed with epilepsy will have recurring. The auras are essentially misfirings and random neuronal firings, the way I understand them, in the brain, where an entire cascade of neuronal structures just lights up without any reason, and it can cause it can cause hallucinations, it can cause delusions, it can cause Alzheimer's, or like feelings of Alzheimer's. For me, the way it manifested oddly was I would get these vivid flashes of dreams that I'd had, not like traumatizing dreams at all. It could have been just a random dream from the night before, or it could have been some dream I had 10 years ago, but it would be incredibly vivid, as if I was living it. I would start to feel very nauseous. I would have to sit down, otherwise I felt like I was going to pass out, and I would have to take deep breaths so that I didn't vomit. And I would also feel a little bit euphoric as well, oddly enough. And the older I got, the more that became, usually it was that when it first started happening in college and it started becoming debilitating, it was like 30 seconds to a minute at a time, and then it became longer. And then eventually I wasn't able to communicate while it was happening. Like my girlfriend at the time got scared because we were having a conversation and it happened in the middle of it. And I tried to respond to her, and I thought I was responding to her, but apparently I was just saying nonsense words, like a stroke victim.
Right.
And yeah, so that was when we got real nervous.
Okay. And then you had a grand mal seizure that nearly killed you.
Yeah.
Is that stimulated the interest in keto? Because you weren't obviously on keto before that.
Yeah, I was not before that. The grand mal was in 2011, and let's see, that it took a while before I actually got to get in touch with the doctor who suggested keto. It was about 2 years, because it was right before I graduated. So I guess it was the end of 2012, because I graduated May of 2013 at college, and end of 2012 was when I finally had already been on, the anti-seizure, anticonvulsant medications, and I was getting really tired of them because I was in my final semester of college and I felt like I couldn't concentrate. I felt foggy and depressed and apathetic, and just like nothing mattered. And I researched into, okay, well, what happens to the people who are on these medications for long periods? And every single person that I read stories about, every single one of them said it just gets worse. You just get more and more foggy. I feel like I'm an Alzheimer's patient and I'm 30 years old, and
Right.
Horrible stories. So I was, at that point I was like, okay, I'm not going to be on these medications. I don't want to have a seizure again, but I got to figure something else out. And that's when my friend recommended seeing this doctor who gave me keto.
Right. And around that time, I guess the internet was around, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like your first instinct to Google everything like we do now. Right. That's good that your doctor recommended that, because to this day, it's still not the standard of care, crazily enough. So
the first big study on it was back 1918, or I don't even think that was the first study, but that's the first one I read about, was the 1918
John Hopkins.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, that's because around that time is a few decades later is when the drugs were formulated, and they were like, well, just take a drug. Why cut out the carbs? You know, why not poison? You know, you can keep poisoning yourself with sugar and carbs and just take our drug, and it'll all be, you know, it'll be healed that way. And obviously we know that that's not true for most patients. So
Yeah.
so what about depression and anxiety? We talked about the epileptic seizures. What about the depression, the anxiety, and just the body dysmorphia? Because I think an OCD you mentioned, because all of those things really are, they share a lot of commonalities.
Yeah, they were all very much wrapped up together, and also my I had really low feelings of self-worth, self-confidence. I felt like I didn't feel comfortable in my masculinity. You know, I felt like I wasn't allowed to have that, allowed to be masculine. That was part of what got me working out in the first place. And then, especially all throughout college, that was very discouraged to express myself as a man, which was incredibly frustrating and demeaning. But as I corrected my diet stuff, and as I got more into the health, those things improved, but they never resolved. And I was getting to the point where I knew that I could live a perfectly fine life. I knew that I wouldn't have to be on medication. I was, you know, for the most part, I could tell that every year was an improvement over the previous year, and I was doing better overall. But I really just felt that, like, well, I'm just going to be one of those people who never really gets to be happy. Just like, that's why it's so sad when I hear people saying things like, I'm just one of those people who's never going to lose weight, or who's always going to be fat, or who's always going to be this, or always going to be that. That's just my lot in life. And it's never your lot in life. So if there's anything I can emphasize more, it is nothing is ever your lot in life. There's always things that we can change. So I was determined to find that, because I saw that there were so many other ways in which I'd improved, and this was just kind of that last little sticking point. And that was when I first tried carnivore in 2018. That was I did a 21 days of, it was just meat and eggs at the time. And I tried to use minimal seasonings. I think I was doing salt, pepper, and garlic powder and onion powder maybe. And that was the best I'd ever felt. But of course, this was still, I wasn't diligent with it. I did that 21 days really well. And then after that, you know, I had a cheat meal, and then I went for a couple weeks, and then I had another cheat meal, and, you know, I was kind of on and off with it. So I knew how much it had helped. I wasn't ready to accept that was what I needed to do if I truly wanted to be healthy forever and free of all my mental health issues. And it wasn't until I met Brett Lloyd through Rivero. I think I first joined those meetings. It was like end of 2019, maybe beginning of 2020. And that's when he recommended to me the 4 tenets of, you know, eat the meat that you crave and can afford, eat whenever you're hungry, and eat till you're not another bite full, and never let a sweet taste pass your mouth, and trust the process. Those big tenets. And I heard them and I believed them, but they didn't fully sink in for that first year or so, until I was like, okay, well, I think I'm doing so much better with almost exclusively carnivore that I can get away with a little keto cheat. You know, I can have some little Lily's chocolates or some sugar-free this or that every once in a while. It's not going to kill me. It doesn't feel like I used to when I would have my, you know, my bingey cheat meals of sugar and carbs. Like, I don't feel that terrible, so I can get away with it. And I believed that for a good year until until I saw all the other people in that community who really had just been, and I think part of it was also that I didn't really believe that anyone else actually only did meat, salt, and water. I was like, these people say that they do that, but I know that they're having some fat bombs or this, you know, because that's what I was doing.
Right.
Yeah, so I didn't really think that anyone actually did it. And then I saw Brett's Instagram, and I saw that for 3.5 years, every single day was ground beef and bacon for every single meal, every single day for 3.5 years. And he posted it, and there's proof of it. And this guy was just the happiest, jolliest, you know, beaming kind of person I'd ever met, and he's in his 60s. And he came onto these meetings every single day with just the biggest smile, always talking about how grateful he was. And I'm like, okay, well, I've been in this group for a year now, and there hasn't been a single day this guy has felt bad. Like, he's just been, and there's like, you know, and that's when I saw 4 or 5 or 6 other people in the same situation. And so that's when I finally just accepted, okay, I need to actually try this. And yeah, and so when I did that, it was as dramatic, I remember, as switching to keto from standard American diet, you know, like,
oh wow.
It was such a dramatic change that, again, it was like this entire veil had been lifted from my eyes. And and he talks about effortless daily happiness, and I experience that every single day now, and every day is better than the last. It's truly amazing. He whenever we get new people in the group, he'll often ask me to describe my experience, and I always get flustered because there aren't words for it. There are no words for how good you can feel, and this is only me doing it, only me adhering to the rules very well for about 6 months. Yeah, so I mean, I started carnivore-ish in 2018, but it's really been the last 6 months that I've actually just been doing meat, salt, and water. And
chicken too, right? Just so that people, you know,
yes,
don't worry, we're still having chicken, right? Shrimp.
I have some pork still, and I have some seafood here and there too. I like beef more. So more
filling. How long did it take after switching over to a really clean carnivore diet, so where there's no keto fun foods at all? How long after you did that switch for you to really did you start really feel the mental health change or benefit?
2 weeks.
It took 2 weeks. Okay.
2 weeks.
Since last mini cheat, or I don't know if it was mini or not, but you know what I mean.
So after cutting out all plant foods, including all the seasonings and everything, it was 1 week that I started feeling a hell of a lot better, and I started feeling that veil lifting. And I started being really surprised that, because all throughout the time that I was keto, I would still have my cravings. You know, if I saw an ad for Reese's peanut butter cups, or for, you know, chocolate cookie Oreo sundae, or whatever the hell it was, everything would light up in my brain still, and I could resist it, but it was hard. And after that first week of meat, salt, water, I would see those things, and for like a fraction of a second, those alarms would still go off in my brain, and then I would stop immediately and think, I don't actually want those things. Those aren't food. That's just a form of poison. It just looks fancy. And so,
project. Yeah.
And then after 2 weeks, gone. I have not had, so since about, I don't know, end of January, beginning of February of this year, I have not had any desire whatsoever to eat anything that is not meat, salt, or water.
What if you get stressed out or a lot of people when they get stressed, you know, emotional eating, or I can't think of any other major emotion. I think stress really is the biggest one. Have you had instances of stress and emotional distress, and how is it now compared to how it used to be?
Yeah, and that's the biggest difference. So that was one of my hugest triggers in the past, is emotional stress. Like, okay, I need some comfort food. I need my cookies, my donuts, and my ice cream. I just gotta dive in and get all of this out. And that was how I always dealt with it. It's a wonder that I never became obese. I'm truly blessed for that. But and I have had significant stressors since then, that, you know, my business is run entirely by myself, and this is, you know, post lockdowns 2 years now, and a lot of people don't have money to be paying for trainers. And so I've gone through some phases where I lost like five clients, which was a huge hit for me. And so there were times where I was like, am I going to be able to support my business, or will I have to do something? And those would have been times in the past where I would have just gone off the rails. But since doing this, it's not even a thought that enters my mind anymore. It's, okay, this is the problem. How do I fix it? And it's that the first thing that I do now is I go to, okay, I know what these stressors can do to me. So let's go for a walk. Let's think this out. Let's meditate. Let's ground. Let's get some environmental hormesis going. Whatever I need to do to rid myself of this stress and pressure.
Amazing. Yeah, that's the biggest thing for people, because they can be doing everything right, and then the moment they get stressed out, the moment something happens that is outside of their routine or what they're prepared for, that's it. You know, they go in a binge, and then they undo all of the work that they had done. So to hear that is just so inspiring for people, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially since I was one of those people who just, everyone thought I could get away with it because I always worked out and this and that.
Right.
And there's always seems like there's that one person, and this is what aggravates me about a lot of the stuff on social media now, is there's so many of these like super buff and fit and strong people online saying, oh no, don't listen to all those diet culture people. You can eat whatever you want. See, look at me, I'm eating a donut. I can do this. And
right.
I'm still buff.
Right.
No,
right. Not for everybody. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that there are some people who can do it and they can count the calories and, you know, they can get buff, but that's not health only, being buff, right? Because there are so many other things like, okay, what about your acne? I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube videos of people who are in the fitness industry, and you know, they're having their oats and everything, they look amazing, they look perfect, but then they're also taking Accutane or Retin-A, you know, because their skin is like out of control, and it doesn't even click in their heads that it's the food that they're eating. Even though they look and they appear to be fit and healthy, they're really not that healthy on the inside, because your skin is a direct reflection of what's going on inside. So yeah, I mean, what do you want? Do you just want the body fat percentage, or do you want everything else in addition to the body fat percentage, you know?
Yeah.
And another thing, for a lot of people, it might be even harder for them to do that if it fits your macros. It might appear to be easier at the beginning, and it's like, yes, tell me more about how I can have some Oreos and still, you know, follow my meal plan and achieve my goals. But what they don't realize is that it's all fake, because once you go through it, you realize that it just only creates more cravings for the vast majority of people. Not everybody, but the vast majority for sure.
Well, and that's where I think the mental health piece is the true final piece of the puzzle, because I'll see those people who look great, they claim they feel great, this and that, and every single one of them will talk about how, oh, I've dealt with depression for 20 years, or oh, I've dealt with this, I've dealt with that. And that's just a thing that people deal with. And now more and more I'm thinking, no one should have any mental health issues ever. I just finished reading that book. I don't know if you've read it, The Awakened Ape.
No,
I just read it. Brilliant by Chuck. I can't pronounce his name, but it's essentially, it's kind of like a talking about paleo life and dieting, and he researched a whole bunch of different tribes like the Maasai and Hadza, and the thing that they realized with all of these tribal cultures is that none of them, virtually zero of them, even had any words in their language for depression or anxiety or stress. Like, what is that? You're not happy?
I've read about that.
Yeah.
They don't even know what depression is. They don't even have low mood states. The women don't even know what PMS is. They don't have the mood swings that the modern woman goes through before she gets her period and on the day of her cycle. So yeah, and they have no acne. I mean, so many things. But I'm gonna look into that book as well, and I'll link it below. I wanted also to ask you about, I guess you covered that, but is there anything you would want to add about the food addiction? You know, you said it took you 2 weeks to get over that, the cravings and the addictions, right? But maybe like before right now, like how bad was it before, just so that people can see the contrast.
Right. Yeah. And it was really, so for me, and I say it took 2 weeks to finally get over that. This is with the caveat of that's after 10 years of doing all different kinds of dieting and researching and all of that. So, so it wasn't just I mean, I would say it was really 10 years of battling with this food addiction. And it started, I mean, ever since I was young, it was, there was no such thing as unhealthy food or as bad food. There was just what everyone said is eat in moderation. Sugar's totally fine. Just eat it in moderation. And
right.
Tell that to an 8-year-old who's just been given a pound of C's candies, he's going to eat the entire pound. And I did it many times, and so it was my entire life was that way. And that's where fitness really helped me originally, because when I first started with the bodybuilding, I was allotted these, okay, once a week on Saturdays, I get to binge and go crazy and have all the stuff I want. So it's not that hard to do. I just have 6 days where I have to be really good. And then I get 1 day where I have all my treats and my desserts. And then I found myself more and more counting the days until I got to have those treats. And then it was cycles of that. And it was probably a couple of years of that before I even realized that I felt so crappy every single time I would have those days. And then I finally started having longer periods of like 2 or 3 or even 4 weeks in a row without having those things before I would have another cheat. And then it would be even more dramatic, the effect that cheat would have on me. But I was still under the bodybuilding mentality that, well, if you go too long without carbs, then you're going to deplete your glycogen and you won't be able to build any more muscle. And so I got worried. So I kept doing the cheats. And
so it was carby cheats.
Yeah. So originally, yes. So like I would be keto, 80 to 90% of the time. And then I would have my full on cookies, ice cream, donuts, 20,
the rock style. Yeah.
Oh yeah. 20,000 calorie, crazy binges. I actually counted it once, and it was something like I had something like 900 grams of carbohydrate in like a 2-hour period. Just gluttonously disgusting.
Wow. Yeah. Wouldn't you pass out after that? Because I remember one time, like I literally just passed out after eating like the whole cookies. It happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt
your blood sugar goes up and drops.
Yeah. I felt.
Wow. You're freezing just for a second. Okay. You froze for like 2 seconds, but we're good now.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, it was a process of years of doing that and having to learn just the hardest possible way that this stuff is really not good for me. It is not food. It is not sustenance. It is not enjoyment. It is purely poison. It is no different whatsoever, in my opinion now, from heroin, cocaine, and any highly addictive drug, except this one's not only highly addictive, arguably even more addictive than some of those other drugs, but it's socially acceptable and even encouraged by doctors and by people we're supposed to trust.
Yeah.
So it is the worst and most insidious habit to possibly kick. And that's why I have so much fealty for anyone and everyone who's struggled with this. I mean, like I said, I was really privileged and fortunate that I never ended up getting really overweight, and I always worked out, so I always looked like I was in good shape. But I've trained so many people now who just struggled with these things so much that I really can't stress enough that you really need to trust the process. And the longer you try with it, doesn't matter how many times you fail, doesn't matter if it takes years, the longer you try, you will succeed.
Yeah. One of these days, it's just gonna stick, because you're gonna say like, okay, well, it's been 2 weeks where I've been good. I don't want to break it today, even though I have the strong craving. I don't want to lose those, 14 days. Not that you're gonna lose them, but it's good to think like, it's good to have that clean diet, at least for the first 90 days. I think everybody would benefit from doing it at least once in their life. 90 days, very clean carnivore, to set a baseline, to know exactly what you're supposed to feel like, how your skin is supposed to look. And then you can see if you want to stick with it, or you don't see much of a difference, which I find to be, very hard to believe. And then you decide what you want to do,
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest, I mean, you mentioned skin again, and that's one of the biggest things that I don't even think I always forget to talk about. Is my whole family is very fair-skinned, my mom calls it lily-skinned, because they step outside in the sun for 5 minutes and they will burn to a crisp and then peel, and it's like that with pretty much all of my family, to the point that my mom and dad, my mom can't really go outside without, no matter how hot it is, without long pants, long sleeves, covered head to toe in sunscreen and a sun hat and glasses and all of that. And I am now out here in Vegas in the dead heat, 100 degrees, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, shirt off, feeling fantastic, not burning whatsoever. I'm completely like just nice even tan all around, and I even got rid of both my mom and I have always had there's a few different names for it. People call it strawberry skin, or the keratosis pilaris, or also folliculitis, I think, are some of the names, where you have these little red bumps on your skin, usually around the arms, sometimes the legs and the face a little bit. That's almost completely gone for me now. Yeah.
Wow.
That was my whole life.
Wow. That's incredible. And to go back to the fact that you're not burning now, I think most of our audience probably already knows, but if people don't know, it's because a lot of plant foods have photosensitizers in them, like, lime, celery, a lot of plant foods. When you eat them, the way that they defend themselves is that they create chemicals that lead that animal that consumes the food to become more photosensitive, which means that now they burn instead of producing like the normal amounts of melanin to protect you from the sun. So I'm so glad. That's great. Let's do 3 more things. Forever,
so if you tell
cool.
me
Cool. Let's talk about carnivore on a budget. What can you advise us regarding that?
Yeah. So I talked a little about this with Dr. Chaffee. I mean, I know the thing that I did for a while was the ground beef and eggs. That's probably the easiest one. Eggs are always real cheap. Even the like if you're sensitive to like conventional eggs, even the Vital Farms super fancy pasture raised organic,
right?
They're closer to maybe 50 cents an egg, but it's still 50 cents an egg. And most people are not me. They don't eat 8 eggs in a sitting. They'll eat 3 or 4 at most. So that's that's a great easy way. And eggs are super high nutrition.
Uh-huh.
And ground beef, you can go to, I mean, it's again, not ideal, but you can go to Walmart, you can go to, you know, Costco, get 10 pounds of ground beef for $2, $3, maybe $4 a pound, depending on where you live. And for most people, the eggs and ground beef will serve you a real long time. It gets boring, sure, but it will serve you well. And I mean, shoot, just ask Brett Lloyd. He's been doing ground beef and bacon for 3 years, and he's not bored of it yet because it makes him feel
There
so
you
good.
go.
So.
And then as you get healthier and you have more energy and your body fat percentage goes to where you want it to be, and now you can do more things and you can produce more money, and you know, then it just kind of takes care of itself.
Well, and that's one of the biggest things I noticed too, budget wise, is I used to worry about that same thing. I was like, well, how am I, because I need to eat 2 or 3 pounds of meat every single day. So how am I going to afford that with meat getting so expensive? And there's a couple things that make a huge difference. Number one, you start realizing where you can cut things in your budget elsewhere much more easily, because your sanity has to come first, and meat is the most important thing for your sanity.
Right.
And then two, it's actually real easy to find sales. Like I get most of my meat now, even with having lots of variety, you know, I'll find chicken on sale for $1 a pound, $1.50 a pound. I'll get the same deal, $1.50, $2 a pound for pork. And then for some reason, lamb is surprisingly not that expensive out here. It's like $6, $7 a pound sometimes. So I'll get that. And then the regular grocery stores will constantly have rotating sales of, sometimes New York's will go on sale for $5 a pound, sometimes ribeyes, sometimes T-bones. So it kind of forces you into having variety anyway, so you don't get bored, and yeah, you just shop around the sales.
That's amazing. And then you said also there was a time where you spent only $25 a week. Can you share that story?
Yeah, that was my ground beef and eggs phase. It was 10 pound tube of ground beef was $20, and then I would get 60 or five dozen eggs at Winco for Winco was insanely low on their prices, so they were between like $3 and $5 for 5 dozen eggs. Yeah, so that's $23 to $25 a week, and I would just have each meal. I would have one meal a day, and each meal was usually, I want to say, like 1.5 or 2 pounds of the ground beef, and then probably 6, or no, it was more like 8 to 10 eggs each meal.
Okay. And you did a full day fast as well, and that's how you were able to keep it to $25 a week. So you ate 4 meals per week. On the other days you fasted, and on the days you ate, you just had that 1 meal. So it is doable, and you can only do that really when you're keto adapted. So only when you're on a carnivore diet where your body knows how to use fat as its main energy source, you can actually pull that off. So don't try it if you're still eating carbs.
That'd be really rough.
Yeah, exactly. How many hours of sleep do you get?
Oh man, now I sleep amazingly. I wake up every morning now between 4 and 4:30, not because I have to, but because I don't have an alarm anymore. I have these beautiful songbirds right outside my window who just, it's almost like a Snow White, like fairy tale. They wake me up every morning at 4:30, just before the sunrise. I get up, I do my cold shower, I do a little bit of core stability stuff that I learned when I was rehabbing my back, that I do every day now. Again, from Dr. Horshig, the McGill Big 3 is what they're called. Huge for people with back problems, by the way. Yeah, from a guy named Stuart McGill. So I do that, and then I go out and I make sure to take my glasses off. I take my shirt off and I sit and I watch the sunrise while I do my deep breathing, Wim Hof breathing exercises. And then I go to bed with the sun as well. So I always try to make sure to, again, take off the glasses and watch the sun set also. And then I'll try to go to bed by about 8 or 9 p.m. every night. So I get easily 8, maybe sometimes even 10 hours of sleep a night.
Oh, okay. So you do get close to 9 or 10 hours.
Yeah, pretty often.
You get your sleep. We're not sleeping 2 hours anymore.
No more 2 to 4 hours. Yeah,
Good.
as good as all this stuff has been, and as much as I'm sure I might be able to get away with that for a little bit. I especially with all the research I've done now. I've read another book called The Circadian Code, which was really interesting, and that really drilled into me the importance of sleep.
Yeah.
So I refuse to ever compromise my sleep like that again.
I'm gonna link all these books also in the description box below, because we have a lot of similarly minded nerds, which is a compliment. Yeah, so we're gonna post all of the links of these books in the description box. Okay, that's great. So, and you sleep great on a carnivore diet, but we still get our 9 hours. Did you say 10? Did I hear you say 10?
Sometimes 10, yeah, usually 8, 8 to 9, but yeah, sometimes 10 if if I have a day that was real exhaustive and
Right.
and I get tired at like 7 or 7:30, then I'll go to bed then, and I'll still wake up at 4 or 4:30.
Let me ask you about sleep latency, which is the amount of time that it takes for you to fall asleep after you go to bed, because that is something that I've noticed. I don't know if you've had that similar experience, but that is something that I've noticed a lot of people when they go on a carnivore diet, they don't toss and turn a lot before they eventually fall asleep. So did you have that?
So yeah, that was actually another big thing that I always forget to talk about in these interviews. Is my entire life I dealt with insomnia, and I was lucky. Even during keto, I was lucky if it took me less than an hour and a half to fall asleep after getting in bed, because my mind would just lay down, and then all of my thoughts would rush in, and my mind would constantly be going.
Right.
Now, that said, for me specifically, as much as I would love to say that meat, salt, and water has cured absolutely everything and done everything for me, I don't think that was the major factor. I honestly think the biggest factor for me in not dealing with that anymore was the combination of incorporating breathing exercises, doing grounding and seeing a significant amount of sun throughout the day,
right,
and meditation. Because now that I'm accustomed to meditating, I essentially just see sleep as like a long form meditation, and I can just get myself into that zone. And
so you meditate every day?
Every single day, yeah.
How long?
I'll usually do it a couple times a day. I meditate while I'm in my sauna, so about 30 minutes there, and then I'll usually meditate once or twice more throughout the day. Another, depending on how much time I have, anywhere from like 20 minutes to as much as an hour.
Any specific type?
I cycle through a few different types. I do a lot of mindfulness. I like the loving kindness meditations a lot. And one of the people, Ash on the Rivero Health community, he's the meditation coach on there, because we have meditation meetings there as well. And he does a body scanning one that he's encouraged me to do more often. And that's been a really nice one, where you just kind of feel for all of the different pains and emotions in your body, and don't try to fight them. Don't try to go against them or force them to go away. You just feel them and let yourself understand them, and just let them pass over you and wash. And that's been really nice. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I've done the Headspace app, and it taught me how to meditate. And there was a period of like 4 months where I would literally wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock and I would do 2 hours of meditation before I would go to UM. That's when I was still doing my PhD at the University of Miami, and I would like be teaching and working on research and all that kind of stuff. But I would wake up and I would meditate for 2 hours. And I can say in that 4 months, it literally rewires your brain. I don't do this anymore, although if I feel the need to, I know how to calm myself and how to get back to that like centered place. But it's not like I do it every day now, but that period of 4 months literally rewired my brain to the point where I'm always aware of my thoughts. If I have like an anxious thought, I can, the noting technique, I note it and it just dissipates. And I don't know, it calms you overall. I think it's life-changing. And I think, again, everybody needs to do that. Maybe when you do that 90-day carnivore diet, do the meditation and learn how to control your mind and be aware of your thoughts. It'll serve you forever, really. You don't have to keep doing it afterwards. The benefits will be with you for life. So
yeah.
Nate, thank you so much. We've learned so many things, and I know your story is going to be so inspiring for so many people. What are your goals moving on?
Well, first of all, thank you. I always love to hear that something is inspiring. So it's always nice. I appreciate it. And thank you again for having me on. My goals for the future are going to be create my own gym. I talked about this when I did an interview a while back with Jimmy Moore on the Living La Vida Low Carb show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I'm hoping in the next couple of years, I want to get a gym going that is different from anything else anyone has ever seen. I don't want to talk too much about it, but I do plan on making it I want it to be a big thing, a big franchise eventually that is popping up all over the world. And it's a holistic health approach where it's not just a gym, but it's essentially a one-stop shop where we're partnered with doctors, dietitians, massage therapists, Reiki healers, yoga coaches, meditative gurus, every single holistic possible health we're partnered with, and we have that integrated within the gym space. So that's kind of my goal, is to, going down the line there, create a worldwide franchise here of those sorts of gyms where we don't need doctors anymore. We just need this sort of holistic healing. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I know we're all going to be rooting for you. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. And is there any last message you would like to leave our audience with?
Yes. There's always a reason to be grateful. I think is the biggest thing that I've learned through all this is, no matter the situation that you're in, there's always a reason to be grateful. I was reading something recently about a guy who was a prisoner of war during World War II, and I think it was, he was in a Nazi prison camp and watched his entire family murdered and raped in front of him. Just horrible things, and they tortured him. And what he realized while he was being tortured was that they can do whatever they want, but they can't tell me how to feel. I don't have to be unhappy. Like, I can be getting in the worst pain of my life. I can still be happy. You can't take that away from me. There's nothing that can steal my freedom from me. So that's, I think, one of the most beautiful things that we can ever conceptualize. And aside from that, always understanding that failure is an opportunity to learn, always. And if you choose to make it that way, then you will always be grateful.
Beautiful. I'm gonna try to find the book. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I tried to look for it and I couldn't find it, but I'll look for that book and we'll link it also below. And yes, there is no such thing as failure. Every time you fail, it's really an experience that is a learning experience, because now the next time you try, you're smarter. So the rate or the chance of you actually succeeding this second, third, or 100th time around is much higher than all the previous attempts. So you only fail when you literally just stop trying. And I know how cliche that is, but the reason it's cliche is because it's true. And so people always repeat it. Huh?
I think it was Edison or someone who said that I never failed once. I learned 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb, and then I learned how to make a light bulb.
Yeah, there's a recent movie that came out about his life that I enjoyed so very much, that I'll link also below about just, you know, what it takes to succeed at something, and just how hard he worked so that now we have light, and how it really revolutionized civilization. So thank you so much, Nathan. Thank you all for staying with us till now. I know that we talked about so many things, and so hopefully this content was valuable, as I'm sure it was. If you liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.